Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. I'm joined this morning by my two colleagues, Council President oh my gosh, I'm like going retro. I need another cup of coffee. Council President Friedson and Council Member Katz. Today we have one item for our morning session, that is Bill 45-23. Property tax credit, individuals 65 and above, retired military service members. Since Council President Friedson is the lead on that, I will actually turn it over to him before turning it over to our county attorneys.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Chair Stewart. I'm not going to refer to you as the former Vice President, since I have a pretty good idea of who that is. I'm really pleased to be having this conversation. I think it's a really important conversation for us as a community. When I took over as Council President, I talked a lot about unleashing our potential, particularly focused on our older adult population and fulfilling our capabilities as a county of vital aging and a community for a lifetime. There are a lot of aspects to that, a number of areas that we're focusing on to try to support the health and wellness, to support the social isolation challenges, to support the career and volunteer opportunities and recreational opportunities for our older adult population. But at the forefront of most of it is housing and the cost of living to age in place and to age in community in Montgomery County. And that's really what this effort is focused on. Older adults are the fastest growing segment of our population in Montgomery County, and it's not even particularly close. Each year, more than 9,000 residents 65 years and older are added to our population. 31% of households include one or more residents 65 and older. So living with dignity and vitality, being able to afford to stay here, to contribute here, to continue to be part of our vibrant community is critical, and something that I know has been harder and harder for many residents. So I look forward to doing this. I will say there's a number of provisions in the bill, all of which are very important. One is reducing the amount of time for residency. The reason why time for residency is important is not only because it makes it more reasonable, it's also because our community has changed a lot. And those who lived here over 40 years ago and those who live here today look a lot different. And so who we are benefiting with a senior property tax credit matters a lot to a county that's trying to be intentional. And so that's why reducing from 40 years to 25 years matters. The assessable number of property matters, because this should be a property tax credit that helps people countywide, because we have challenges countywide, and it shouldn't be restricted to only certain parts of the county and certain parts of the community. And it's targeted. It's focused on who needs it the most. We recognize that not everybody who is 65 years and older needs this, but we have many people who are on fixed incomes. We have many people whose houses are rapidly growing. Assessments went up statewide about 26%. There are huge pressures. We have raised taxes on residents, and if you're on a fixed income, you can't keep up, and oftentimes you can't even come close to keeping up. And so this is a way to address that. So look forward to the conversation. Very much look forward to moving this bill forward, to providing relief to our older adult population, and to ensuring that we send a very strong signal that we value and appreciate those who have been part of our community for a long time, and who we want to continue to stay in our community for as long as they're able to stay. So with that, I'll yield back, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz would like to give some opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I actually remember last year's Vice President of the Council as well. I can't recall his name. But I just wanted it to be noted that my wife Sally and I have owned our current home for 38 years in August. And I'd like to make it so that everything is transparent here. Some of these amendments could affect the eligibility for the credit that I would have for my home, though it would affect every other person in Montgomery County as well, not just me. Obviously, the tax law applies generally to everyone in the county, including council members. This is, I've been told by our attorneys that this is not a conflict of interest. If someone believes it is, I certainly would recuse myself, but it's the nature of the tax law. I wanted to share the information about the eligibility to be fully transparent to the public and my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. Now I'll turn it over to Ms. Wellens, who can walk us through this. I know there are a number of amendments that have been put forward, and I think we probably have some questions also on the fiscal impact of moving forward with this. So, Ms. Wellens?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And unless you would like me to handle it otherwise, I'll simply go in the order of issues as they appear in the packet, and then move to the addendum last, but happy to shuffle things up if that
works for us. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. So just a quick clarification first. On page 4 of the staff memorandum, you see at the bottom a discussion of 2 separate enabling laws that affect members of the military or military veterans who have various levels of disability. So I just wanted to clarify, because there was a lot of public testimony regarding potentially amending this bill in order to expand the credit for certain veterans under a state enabling law, which is section 9-265 of the tax property article. The basis for the current bill that's before us is a different part of state law. It's actually 9-258 of the tax property article. And that's important just because the criteria under these different enabling laws are different. So, the council may wish to pursue a separate bill along the lines of section 9-265, which is different in that it allows for a larger credit for a subset of military members, those who are honorably discharged and have a permanent disability of a rating of at least 50%. So I just wanted to make that clear so that members of the public didn't think we were ignoring the request for amendments along the lines of the other state enabling law that's not the one that's subject here. So the county has the ability to do multiple credits that could, affect military veterans in different ways, and it might, they might be more generous based upon the level of disability. So I hope that's helpful.
I think Council President Friedson would like to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. Just before, so I'm glad you raised this. I was going to raise this as well. I met with the Maryland Military Coalition, among others, after we introduced this bill, talked about this specific issue. I committed to look into it and address it, and in support of making the change. But council staff has advised that it really is, because it's in another part of the county code, it really should be done through separate legislation and not as an amendment to this legislation based on what we've noticed. There is an effort within the council, so stay tuned in order to move this forward, that I am very supportive of. And so while we've been advised that this is not the best vehicle in order to do it, because we're amending a different part of the code as part of this bill. Obviously, we very much appreciate our veterans and service members. It's an important part of the fabric of Montgomery County, and something that we're very grateful for, and something that we will be addressing via subsequent legislation, which I will be supporting moving forward. So I just wanted to note that. Appreciate Ms. Wellens, you noting that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wellens, were you going to turn to the amendments now? Because I had a question I wanted to ask before we got to the amendments on the fiscal impact on page 3, since we have representatives from the Finance Department and OMB here. If we could just get, I think, more clarification on the fiscal impact, and particularly the need to add 2 additional staff members to the Department of Finance to, if we put this property tax credit in place.
Absolutely. Mike Covey, the Director of Finance. I have with me Dennis Hetman and Todd Foley-King, who actually worked on the fiscal impact statement. But for that particular part, we have over 20 tax credits that are administered by one person. When the original law for this particular tax credit was put in place, we requested, as we normally do when we are understaffed, additional staff to do that, to deal with that particular credit, which is this credit being amended here, and we haven't gotten any additional staff. This tax credit is very, very time-consuming to administer. It's actually the second largest tax credit that we have after the income tax offset credit. It's not even close to the same size, excuse me, as the income tax offset credit, of course, because that has over 150,000 participants or applicants, and this one has about 6,000. So, but these amendments will actually increase that very, very substantially. There is there's a means testing component potentially for this that is going to require additional staff just to deal with that. For what it's worth, one of the things that we're likely to have to do is collect income information from an applicant, and when we do that, it will likely be from a federal or a state income tax document, probably a return. And we have no way of knowing whether what somebody's going to submit is accurate or not, absent corroboration from either the state of Maryland or the federal government. So we're going to have to put in place a pretty significant program with its own policies and procedures to actually administer this. And also, for what it's worth, the folks who will be applying for this have told us over the years since 2017, when the credit started, that they're generally averse to doing anything online. So everything has been paper, and so when you're dealing with that amount of paper, it's eyes on. People have to read it, or we have to have very good OCR capabilities, which we do actually. So we really do, in order to do a new tax credit, we are overburdened with what we've got today. So this will allow us to keep going with all the other tax credits, but also administer an updated, amended, more beneficial tax credit through this vehicle right here. So we're really going to need that. It's really, we're not going to be able to do it without at least two people. And actually, I've been thinking about it over the last few weeks. I think we can do it with two people if we can figure out a way to get the state or the IRS to cooperate with us and to give us corroborating information when we ask for a copy of somebody, or part of a copy, because it wouldn't have to be the entire tax return. We're going to have to figure out how to do that, and we're going to hope that they're going to want to work with us on it. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, but we're going to have to get them to cooperate with us on this. The other thing is, what they're going to give us probably is going to have PII, personally identifiable information. So that in and of itself is going to require an awful lot of work to make sure that everything is protected properly. So 2 new people, absolutely critical for this. I've never said that before in a hearing in my 31 years of doing this. But it's absolutely critical. If we're going to pass this, if you're going to pass this in the form that it's in substantially right now, or something very much like it, then we're going to need additional personnel to deal with it. And after a few years, we probably, the need for that will probably lessen, but we might need more than 2 people to start it off. So that's what I've been thinking for the last few weeks after a couple of conversations that we've had. So.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Ms. Wellens, if you want to continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Issue number 2 for your consideration, and we are on page 5 of the staff memorandum, are amendments potentially being put forward by Councilmember Katz. I don't know if you would prefer to speak to them, or I can walk through them if you'd like.
You can.
Okay, so, great. So if you look at Circle 53 of the council staff packet, That contains Councilmember Katz's proposed amendments. The first amendment is the kind of the more complex one in that it would do three different things. It would remove from the bill the home value threshold, meaning that there would no longer be a cap on how much a house would be assessed in order for somebody to be able to get the credit. However, the credit would apply only to the first $700,000 worth of the home's assessed value. This amendment also would eliminate the income eligibility requirements that Director Covey was just speaking to, and would increase the amount of the credit to 25% of the home's assessed value. And then you can see, the particular amendments are laid out for you at Circle 53.
Councilmember Katz?
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing that one up. It's my understanding, and if this is wrong, you're going to tell me right away, but it's my understanding that right now, if someone's home is more than $700,000 or $750,000 or whatever the number is that we're working with now, that if it's $751,000, they get nothing in credits. And is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Katz.
And first, nobody calls me Mr., but other than that, that's good. But so my concern is that this is assessed value of homes. Someone bought a home for $300,000, and over time, the assessed value has gone up to $700 and whatever. They're not getting anything. It's not. I mean, they would, if they sold their home, they would be able to recoup whatever, but they're not. That's not what they're doing. So I believe it's fair to do up to the $700,000, and then and I also believe the 25% part. But I just don't think it's fair that someone would get nothing because their home was assessed more. That's where I am.
Council President Friedson?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I think the couple of challenges is one of the points of this bill is to expand it for who can receive it, but then target it to those who need it. This goes in the opposite direction. If you had a $1.7 million house, you'd be getting a credit on the first $700,000. So it's a bit of a different dynamic. I also think the vehicle to do what is being suggested here is really the ITOC, the income tax offset credit, which does almost exactly what you're talking about. We currently have a $692 income tax offset credit. There's been a discussion in previous years of whether or not that should be expanded. What that essentially does is creates a level of progressivity to the property tax bill. Because if you're getting the same number, if you have a $500,000 house as if you have a $1.5 million house, the benefit to the $500,000 assessed value homeowner proportionally is much larger than the $1.5 million. So by making it not a sliding scale, in this particular case, it actually creates progressivity by not having the ramp on it. So my personal view, I understand and appreciate where you're coming from here. I think that the better vehicle would be to focus the senior property tax credit in the way that we have done it here, and then to take a look at the ITOC in general for all homeowners to address that issue. And if you wanted to expand that, for instance, the discussion has been whether it should go to $800. And basically, there's some great previous staff reports that looked into this, I think, in a very exhaustive way. But the higher the income tax offset credit, the more benefit you're giving to homes that are below the median sales price. I'll also note, $700,000, while seemingly a decent number, the average detached sales price of a home in Montgomery County right now is $970,000. It was $942,000 just a few months ago. It was in the 800s just a couple of years ago. So 900 is actually, what this is proposing is essentially just below what the current median price in Montgomery County is. And so the idea being those who are below the median getting the benefit, which helps to provide a level of targeting. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just weigh in and thank Councilmember Katz for raising this. And I think as Council President Friedson noted, there's numerous aspects of this, of making sure that members of our community who want to continue to stay in their home can do so, even if they're seeing their annual incomes decrease, but their house values increase. And I think these are complex issues on figuring out how to actually get to the folks who are in need. And I think in this case agree with Council President Friedson, and would not support the amendment, but appreciate it being brought forward, because I think this is an ongoing conversation of how do we use the different vehicles that are available to us as a government, and how to balance those and use them in the appropriate way. So I think with this, then it would be 2-1 on the Councilmember Katz amendments.
Thank you. And then the second potential amendment by Councilmember Katz on Circle.
25%, is that also including to raise it to the 25%? No?
That was, so this was the one about the number of years that an individual would need to reside in the house to qualify. And as originally, well, the current law is 40 years. The bill, which as introduced, would alter to 25 years. And then your Councilmember Katz's amendment was 30 years.
So I think there's essentially three, just to help my colleague here, there's 3 Katz amendments from what I understand. One we just substantially talked about. Right. The other is really 2 parts, but really the same issue, which is eliminating the income eligibility, the targeting purpose of the bill, but increasing the credit to what you were saying to 25%. Right. The current bill, as introduced, has different thresholds that range from 20% of the credit, which is the current number, to 50%, depending on where you fall into an income threshold. And then the third, from my understanding, just to make sure, is rather than going from 40 years to 25 years, which is my preference, and as the bill is introduced, reducing that to 30 years. So perhaps we should dispose of the second one, the income, or
right.
The third
So
one first.
I think it was clear that on the first one, remove the home value thresholds. That was the first one, 2-1. And then number 2 and 3, eliminate the income eligibility requirements. And if that is done, then raise the credit to 25% of the home assessed value. And I think that is also a vote of 2-1 to keep in, and we'll get to my amendment proposal, the income eligibility requirements. And so now we're up to Councilmember Katz supporting establishing 30 years as the numbers of years applicant is required to live in the same dwelling. And I think we have 3 numbers on the table. The current way the credit works is 40 years. The bill before us has 25 years, and the amendment would be 30 years. You want to speak to that, Councilmember Katz?
Thank you. There again, we've said this is a difficult discussion, or it can be difficult to figure out what's the right way. I believe that 25 years is not long enough type of thing. I believe that 30 years, it's when does someone buy the home or that they're going to retire from or would like to retire in. And I think 25 years is too soon. Many times there's still school-age children in that home. There's an expense to the government beyond. I think over the years, and I was the first, the person that for this legislation originally, in 40 years we got complaints all the time that 40 years is too long, and it is a long time. But I also believe that 25 years is too short. That's why I came up with the King Solomon side of the 30 years. Thanks.
Before I turn to Council President Friedson, I had a question, and I don't know if the Finance Department was able to look at, and I know there are many moving variables here, so I don't know if you could tell what the fiscal impact difference would be given the current bill we have with the income eligibility requirements if we change that from 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, we can't tell you today.
Okay.
And we're doing Yeah, we'll have to schedule it. We're trying to get the revenue estimates for the budget done for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we definitely can take a look at that. That's a bit simpler than some of the other amendments that you're going to be looking at.
Yeah. Okay. Council President Friedson?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, I mean, 4 years is clearly too long. You know, the challenge here is this is prospective for moving forward. The family home, as was described earlier with school-age children, there's two thresholds here. It's the time at which you're in the home, and it's your age, because this is for older adults. So the idea that you have school-age children, you know, and you're above 65 is possible, but not, you know, particularly common or likely. And the 25 years reflects the changing dynamic of family establishment and creation and home ownership that has changed, you know, over the last 20 years. So, you know, people buying their forever home, quote unquote, the home that we would want them to age in place, they can't afford to move into that when they're 25 to 30 or even 30 to 35. You know, many people are, you know, moving into that, you know, quote unquote forever home, as was talked about. If they're lucky enough to be able to do that, they're moving into it, you know, closer to 40, you know, well into their 30s. So, you know, we have received, I mean, two things I think are important. One, much of the suggestions that we have received from the public are to expand this further, not to restrict from what has been proposed. This would be a restriction to what has been proposed. The other is a concern that I am getting quite a bit of recently, which is if you buy a starter home and then you buy your forever home, the clock starts over. So the challenge here is you could be pushing somebody, you know, well beyond their 65 because they weren't able to afford their, you know, quote unquote forever home until much later in life. And so, you know, 30 years is not just 30 years in the county. It's not just 30 years paying a mortgage. It's not just 30 years paying county property taxes. It's 30 years in the exact same home, which is less likely today than it was before. So for all those reasons, I really do think unless you expanded it and said in order to be eligible, it's 30 years in the county, which I think would be harder to do. I really think 25 years in the same home with the 65 age restriction plus the income restrictions and the targeting is the right balance and certainly is in keeping with what the overwhelming number of folks from the public are telling us that they like to see.
Thank you. I hate being the deciding. I think on this one, I in looking at it, was leaning towards the 30 years. And I'd like to say when we bring this back to the full council, since we will have more information on the other amendments and the financial, that we can revisit this at full council. But so I don't know, Ms. Willens, if the easiest way is a 2-1 vote for the 30 years with further consideration at council, at full council, because I think that additional information would be helpful. So. Or I could abstain. Yeah. We can make it 1-1 with me abstaining, and then, yeah. Yes, Mr. Covey, yeah.
Sorry. I just would like to note, I had an 88-year-old taxpayer stop by the office yesterday, and he's been getting this tax credit since the very beginning, and this year's tax credit that he's already gotten is the last one for the people who were first into the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just wanted to sort of remind you of that.
We're going to get to that.
That
As well. Yeah, Council President Friedman.
Yeah, the one piece that I didn't mention, I appreciate the further discussion and perhaps the information of what the fiscal impact is of this particular change. I think would be helpful at full council. As part of the conversation going from 40 years to 25 years, one of the things that we have heard from a lot of people is how the county looks a lot different than it did 40 years ago. And so if you bought a home, the homeowner demographics of the county 40 years ago and the homeowner demographics of the county 25 years ago and certainly today are much different, and they're getting more and more different. So the longer we make the eligibility requirement for the tax credit, the more likely it is to benefit a smaller subsection of people in the county, which I think is an important piece that should be noted. So I just want to make sure I note that. But thank you, and yield back.
Great. All right, so we'll record that, Ms. Wellens, as 1-1 with 1 abstain, and further conversation at full council.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So the next issue for the committee's consideration is issue number 3 of the staff packets. It's on page 5 of the staff memorandum. And it relates to the definition of annual income. This is really intended as a clarification. Currently, in discussions with the Department of Finance, the way that annual income was originally drafted by me was not sufficiently succinct, and so the attempt here would be to adjust to define the annual income as the federal adjusted gross income of the individual tax credit applicant. And I have a clarification here. I put for the immediately preceding federal tax year. Actually, it really should be the prior year. Director Covey has explained to me in order for the applicant to really have sufficient time to know what their federal adjusted gross income was in order to be able to do the application in a sufficient time. So I hope that makes sense. I don't know if Director Covey can speak to whether the clarification I just mentioned works.
If I can expand a little bit on it, let me just give you an example. If we were going to have this be in effect for this year, for July of 2024, which we couldn't possibly do, but say it's July 2024, if the last federal tax year is 2023, calendar 2023, and the filing deadline for 2023 taxes is after the application deadline for this. So in order to make it simple for everybody, the taxpayer, for us, for the state, or the IRS, whoever we have to get corroboration from, having the last closed, if you will, tax filing actually makes a lot of sense. It's a year older, but it's actually the taxes that they filed April of 2023, so they would have that answer on probably April 15th, if not before, of 2023. When they go to apply later in 2023 or near the beginning of 2024, it will already have been there. The IRS will have a record of it. The state will have a record of it. And it would be a relatively simpler deal to actually get corroboration if we're able to get corroboration from the state or the IRS. It will be easier to do it with something that's actually complete, and it will have been completed nearly a year earlier. But it makes sense to me if you want to do this. People's incomes don't change radically from year to year most of the time. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't.
Yeah, Councilmember Katz.
And I appreciate that, but if someone was working and then they retire, then their income has changed in that next year. So I understand it's going to be difficult to figure this thing out, but there's going to be instances when it's beneficial to someone to take as close to the time as possible.
That is absolutely true, and the only issue is getting corroboration from the state or from the federal government, and that may not happen before we do the tax bills. So we would be in the position of having to retroactively apply tax credits, which is doable. It's not efficient, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah. You're fine with this?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, there are challenges to it, but from an administrative purpose, I think the benefit of doing it this way outweighs the potential challenges. You mentioned, I will note, the closer you are, in terms of recency to retirement, the less of a financial burden this is likely to play. There's a 3-year lag potentially for the assessment. The farther away you are, the more likely that your income is more fixed than the assessment increase of your.
Unless they don't send them out, and then
of
you
your
might have
yeah,
6
unless they don't
years.
send them out, exactly. So anyway, I think, trying to be reasonable here and understanding the, limitations of the department and the, the burden, I think this is a reasonable approach.
Yeah, I agree, especially Director Covey, as you described before, some of the potential challenges in getting this, if this passes as it's moving towards getting this up and started. I think trying to simplify that and making sure that we can do it in the department and provide the service to the residents in a smooth way. And then if you come back to us and say, hey, this is working and we could adjust it, we could do that in the future. So yes.
And I'm in agreement with that part. I am. I don't understand, though, how you're going to write it so that someone's going to understand it. Because you're saying, and candidly, you know what I'm attempting to say.
Yes.
You're saying it's not the last taxes you filed.
Right.
It's the year.
Right.
But
This is a very good point. And I tried to find some samples. So far, I haven't found the sample, although I believe I've seen this before in our code. But so the way I would word it currently, but I can certainly, work with the committee and Department of Finance to make sure that we have it right and that it's something that a taxpayer who's reading the law can comprehend. But the way that I have it right now would be annual income means the federal adjusted gross income of the individual tax credit applicant for the federal tax year that occurred prior to the deadline, that occurred, 2 years prior to the deadline to file an application for the tax credit. I do think it probably makes sense for me to confer with the Department of Finance, make sure we've got it correct.
President.
Yeah. The legislative language is going to be very confusing, I just want to note, but the actual practical language won't be. Because you'll say for tax year, like for your federally adjusted gross income for tax year 2023. So like that is a very clear number, but it's important to make sure that the legislative language reflects that practical reality. But I do think in the notice, and I want to get to this at the end of, what information is going to be provided, in, regular property tax slips as we provide regular information and, but that information and the ability to provide it in a clear way, to me, doesn't seem like it will be that complicated. But the legislative language that's evergreen, because it doesn't have a specific year tied to it, is confusing, for sure.
All right, so we in agreement on that?
We're in agreement.
No objection to that amendment.
Great, thank you. Issue number 4, which is on page 6 of the memorandum, also deals with deadlines here, so I might need Mr. Covey to, again, explain why this is needed, but it would alter the application deadline to be January 15th as opposed to April, in order to provide sufficient time to determine the income of the applicant.
Right, and the issue there may or may not be an issue. When we go to the state to see how they could help us determine that the income statement that is being provided by the taxpayer is accurate or not, I'm concerned that it's going to take longer than a month for that to happen. So I building in more time. It goes along with the closed tax year that we previously discussed. And so that information will be 8 months old by the time January 15th rolls around. So this should not be an issue for the taxpayers, I would think. I don't think April 1st is a magic number, nor is January 15th. It could be somewhere closer to January. I think April. We'll talk to the state to see what they could do for us. I'm sure the state controller's office will do their best to help us out with this. But just in case it's not going to be easy for them to do, I thought we should just build in a little bit of extra time for all that information to be vetted by both the county and the state. That's the only reason for this.
We good with that? Council President Peterson?
The middle of the month is just a little random to me. I mean, would it make sense to make it like February 1st or January 31st or
February 29th.
Yeah, just
Sure.
yeah. I mean, to me,
I picked January 15th, but you certainly can pick.
I don't feel strongly about it,
I'd
but
rather be February, late January, early February than late March.
no, I agree
Yeah.
with that. By February 1st,
February 1st?
I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Just it's an easier, cleaner
Yeah.
to.
All right, number 5.
Thank you. Number 5, a clarification of the definition under the bill of consumer price index. This would essentially just be to indicate that a successor index also would count under the definition. And there's a typo there. I apologize. I added that would be the Washington, Arlington, Alexandria core-based statistical area, or a successor. It should be index. And then there's also a clarification regarding that the index that you would use would be for the prior calendar year.
Good. All right, without objection.
The next clarifying amendment for your consideration under issue number 6, page 6, would be to clarify the definition of qualifying amount for purposes of how much the home's assessed value, essentially, for qualifying for the credit. And this would be another clarification regarding dates, that we're talking about the property tax year here as opposed to, the federal tax year or calendar year. Since we have both of those things going on in this bill, I want to be clear about which one we're talking about where.
You're good. All right, without objection.
And the next set of issues, although before turning to that, I just wanted to apologize because I didn't introduce our colleague from the Office of Management and Budget. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good evening, good morning, everybody. Not evening, sorry. I wish it was evening time.
Has this been that painful for the Office of Management and Budget?
Flying by, My name is Abdul Rauf. I'm the OMB analyst for finance, representing this fiscal impact bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next issue is turning to the addendum, which was published yesterday and contains potential amendment by Chair Stewart.
Yeah, great. So this came up from the public testimony we received from the Commission on Aging and also the City of Tacoma Park. And in reviewing that and thinking about how always to try and make our legislation a little bit more evergreen so that we don't have to revisit it, I thought their suggestion of basing the eligibility criteria on area median income and doing a couple of different groupings would be beneficial to us moving forward. Try to, and as best as possible, mirror those buckets to the ones that Council President Friedson sort of had in his original bill, with an addition of a fourth tier that would say that anyone that had an annual income equal or less than 20% of AMI was 100%, had received 100% of the county property tax imposed on the dwelling, a credit of 100%. So, so there, that is why I was moving this forward, and I don't know and I know it was late coming, so I don't know if my colleagues have any thoughts on that, or OMB or our Department of Finance do.
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
We haven't had a chance to really sort of think about this yet, having just seen it, and the income component is the most difficult to model in this particular case. So we can let you know. We can give you an idea of how long it will take us to do this part of it if you want us to take a look at it.
Okay. Council President Friedson?
Yeah, well, I appreciated this thoughtful suggestion from Tacoma Park, and it's definitely in keeping with the spirit of what we were attempting to do by targeting this credit, making sure it's going to the folks who need it the most. And to have this be evergreen. That is the reason why we included some components with CPI in this. So this adds an additional layer of progressivity, which was intended, and a level of specificity, which I think will be easier to give specific direction to the department of exactly what this is based off of and how to calculate it. So very much see this as a friendly amendment and would be supportive of this.
And I'm supportive of it as well. I think my only concern on this part of it is that people who need to apply for this, whether they're going to throw their hands up and say, I'm not going to give you that information, I don't want to give you that information, and the people that we're trying to help will be the people that we're not helping. So that's my concern. I'm certainly supportive of it. Thanks.
But I think, I mean, unless I'm misreading this, I think AMI is a calculated amount, right? And they're going to be giving us income information. So we should be able to do the matches for that. The issue is actually in the fiscal impact. We're figuring out from the data set that the only data set that's available on this, whether we can slice it and dice it this way or not. So, but I think we could deal with the fact that you're looking at AMIs because the applicants are going to be providing the income data. So I think that'll be okay. It's modeling this for fiscal impact that's going to be more difficult than that.
We like giving you challenges.
And I'll just say the order of magnitude is similar, right? I mean, what they have done here is, I mean, it will change the percentage of within the strata that is being focused on, but 75% AMI is in the same in a similar proportionality to what was originally proposed. The area median income is like 116,000, 118,000, depending on the year. So, I think just to be clear, I mean, I think the challenge is, for you with the fiscal impact statement of breaking down, which properties are getting what percentage of credit, but the total eligible pool should be fairly similar to what was expected. It's just a question of how much of the property tax credit they would be eligible for the most part. Other than that, would be more on the margins than the others. I just thank you.
Yeah, and that was the intent too. Was to stay in line with what was being proposed and not. All right. Well, I think that's Council President Friedson.
Yeah, just one question for the department about every year you send notices to varying degrees of response, as I know, much to the frustration of the department, despite its best efforts to get as much information to property taxpayers as possible. Does it make sense for us to include language, uncodified language, or some language in the legislative text to note inclusion of this in notice, or do you think that's something that the department can handle without that?
Right. We would do this anyway for any new credit. And also, these types of credits are listed in the tax facts brochure, which is part of your tax bill anyway.
Right, the cardboard insert, the hard paper.
The trifold.
Yeah, the trifold.
The trifold.
That's
so the buck slip is usually a colored sheet of paper. That's a third of a sheet, third of an 8.5 by 11 sheet. And this, if it gets passed in time, this would show up on a buck slip side, so that it would be the only thing on that side, so that people would, so it would bring it out for people, so they would notice it a little bit more easily. And typically we have things on both sides of buck slips. Every once in a while we print the same thing on both sides, so people don't miss it. We did this with the ITOC changes, the homestead equals ITOC change a couple of years ago, and it was effective. It just wasn't. It wasn't all that. It wasn't enough to catch everybody's eye. But in this case, this will definitely be a buck slip if we get it before June. So definitely, absolutely.
Great. And then I just wanted to speak to the point that you made earlier about the 88-year-old taxpayer who you were speaking to is on year 7 of a 7-year
Yes.
criteria. This expands it to 10 years. One of the things that the bill does is to essentially grandfather in those receiving the current benefit. So nobody is losing an existing benefit. This would expand to those who aren't currently receiving. So I just wanted to note that. I think it's very important. That was very much part of the discussion of the crafting of this bill, to make sure that no one is negatively impacted by this. Now, I will say, depending on where we end up, we could be restricting the number of people as was proposed by going from 25 to 30 and other changes. But in terms of who currently gets the credit versus what this bill has introduced, anybody who receives a credit will not lose a credit by passage of this bill, which I just think is really important to know. So I'll get back.
And just to ask a question, and I think I know the answer to it, but I want to just clarify, because this is a good point, because if we expand to 10 years and if we do go down to 25, someone doesn't have to take the tax credit. So if they're in their home for 25 years, they could wait until they've been in their home for 30 years or 35 years, and then their 10-year window of being able to take this tax credit kicks in.
Absolutely.
Right. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I think sometimes this all gets really confusing as we're talking about it. Yeah.
Yes, actually, that's what has happened with the current version of the credit anyway, because not everybody knows about it immediately.
Yeah.
Not everybody who would be eligible knows it when they're eligible for it already. So, but as people learn about it, they apply for it, and that will be the case, that you will be able to get it if you've been there at least 25 years and you are at least 65 years old. Yes, absolutely.
Great. All right, just for clarity's sake, I think on the amendment I put forward, that was 3-0 to move that forward, and we'll get further information before we go to full council. So I think that takes care of the amendments.
Todd Foley, the analyst with the Department of Finance. If I can ask a question of clarification from the council. It sounds like the intent is that people that receive the credit currently will receive the credit in the new form for an extended 3 years. Is that correct?
Would be my intention.
Yeah, well, if you receive the current credit, and not everybody who is receiving the current credit is on year 7. So, some are. You could be up to year 7, but some people receiving wouldn't be in year 7. They could continue on with the current credit that they're getting, but this would make you eligible for 3 more years of this credit.
Thank you, council member. I just note that the fiscal impact statement as it's currently done assumed that people receiving the current credit received it for their 7 years and were done, because of the statement in the act that it must not affect any tax credit applied for prior to the effective date. So the fiscal impact statement would be higher in terms of costs, reflecting another 3 years for the existing 6,000 or so recipients.
Because in the fiscal impact statement, you netted out the people who've already received it and assumed that they...
We assume that they roll off after their 7 years.
Okay, well, I guess the good news or bad news is not that many people receive the current credit, so it's really not as big of a number as the people who'd be eligible.
Yeah, it's 5,000 people today. So, and that's about the original number, a little over 5,000 people. This is the last year that they have the credit. Today, this year.
Right. As noted, though, not everybody. So you're saying most people who receive it have started on year 1. So
Yes.
we've added no new people to the rolls,
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, most of the people who are receiving it have been actually receiving it from the very beginning. Yes.
And that's
They're-
5,000.
Yeah, it's somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000. I'd have to look it up.
So basically what the delta we're talking about is for those 5,000 or 6,000 people extending the credit 3 more years. And that's what we have to update the fiscal impact statement on. Okay.
Correct.
Right. When you were talking about it goes to 10 years now, what I was thinking, and I need to actually think this through before actually asking this question, but I'll just put it out to you. Do the people who have already gotten the credit in the current form, should they continue to get that form of it for 10 years, or are they transitioning to this new credit? I mean, that's something that you probably want to think about, because doing one is, I think doing either one is possible, but it's going to be confusing. Well, it's confusing right now. I'm sorry. It's not clear to me the way the bill is written that they would be getting the new credit for 3 years rather than the current credit for just an additional.
You're asking whether or not somebody who currently gets a credit, whether they can extend their current credit for 3 more years,
Right.
or whether they could, at the expiration of their 7 years on the current credit, start a new 10-year if they're eligible under this bill.
No, that's not the
no,
question.
I'm sorry. Let me restate it. My question is, for the people who get the credit today and have gotten it for 7 years, are we just going to continue that version of the credit for 3 years, or are we going to that 7-year term ends this year, and then only for 3 years they would be getting the newer version of the credit, which is means tested and which will require them to apply every year for the first time, actually, since the 2nd year of the credit. Remember, originally people had to apply every year, and we said there's no means testing, so there's no reason for people to apply every year because they're not proving their income or anything. All they're proving is that they've lived there for an X number of years, and if they still live there next year and they still have another year on their tax credit, then we would just give it to them every
Right.
year until the term expired. 5 years originally, 7 years today, and if you want, we can do 10 years for everybody who gets the credit today, the same credit. It wouldn't be means tested. Or do we switch them to means testing, which means they're going to get confused when they lose their credit because they didn't apply for this. That's just one of the pitfalls of actually transitioning existing applicants to a new tax credit that has different requirements. So one is easier than the other for everybody, but the easier one means we will have 2 different tax credits for 2 years, which is should not be a problem. It would just be 2 different tax credits. It would be the end of the original tax credit, and then we will be starting a new credit for other applicants. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And so what was
I
your
actually
intent?
explained that correctly? Okay.
Miss Wellens was trying to chime in.
Oh, sorry,
there,
Ms.
so-
Wellens, go ahead.
Did I make Christine's life
Yeah.
worse? I'm sorry.
No, I'm really glad, thank you to the Department of Finance for bringing this up, because obviously it is much better to clarify now than to attempt to after a law is enacted. I understand what Director Cavillo is saying. I do think that in terms of the legal side, I think we probably need to clarify the grandfathering clause or provide a new transition clause for these individuals who are currently receiving the credit to exactly specify the intent that, as Mr. Cavillo stated.
Could I ask a question? How challenging would it be if you offered the choice? Like if somebody could, who currently gets it, could elect to take 2 years of the existing with no, means testing and no change. Now, the challenge for that would be they'd be foregoing potentially, depending on what their means are, a higher credit. So that's the trade-off, but they would not have to apply, and they would know what they were getting and would really have to do almost nothing besides elect to stay in the current program, or no longer get that for 2 years and go into the other program. Is that too hard to administer?
I don't think it would be really difficult to administer. I think what's going to happen, knowing what taxpayers do, some of them are not going to respond, and then they're going to respond after the fact, right? So they won't apply to do that, but they'll ask for it after the fact. I think what would make it administratively efficient would be to give people the option to change, and that's only a one-time option. So you either change to the new credit or you don't change to the new credit. Give them a deadline to do it so that we don't, it's not a continuous problem like the homestead ITALC issue that was foisted on us by others.
Is the same February 1st timeline for the first year?
Yeah.
Can you make it the same time, just because you've given yourself some breathing room there?
Yes, I would think that would be fine. The other thing that I would ask, and I need to talk to my Treasury people about this, just in case they need something else, but having been a Treasury person, I think I know most of it. But I think what we'd also like you to do is you can give them the option, it's a one-time switch or not, but you also, if they don't do anything by that deadline, then the original just continues, because
Right.
that's what they're used to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to be problematic
Yeah.
if they lost it and they just heard a year ago. Mike told them a year ago, hey, you're gonna keep getting this for another 3 years.
All right, so just to
And they-
clarify, I agree with you.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate you clarifying. Adding transition language that by February 1st, the first, point that everybody has to, demonstrate their eligibility, those who receive the current credit must affirmatively elect to change to the new credit, and if they don't, then they default in the existing credit, which would be extended to 10 years. So they would get essentially 2 more years of that. Does that? Well, there's a 1 year lag. Because it's not going to be enacted immediately after there's a year lag.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's right, but again, I'll let you know if the Treasury folks.
Right.
think
Let's go
that
with
is-
that, and then you can come back and
Yeah.
tell us that we need to change it. But I think it's easier if there's agreement with colleagues. That would be in keeping with what I was intending in drafting the
Yeah.
bill, and it sounds like there's agreement, and it sounds like we have a nod from our legislative attorneys to have to write this in language that makes sense.
Yes, I understand the concept, and so I'll draft the language, and obviously that will be subject to yours and the full council's final approval, and if we need additional input from Mr. Covey in the meantime, that can be, incorporated appropriately.
Okay, so that would be a 3-0, just
Yep.
checking with the chair.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Absolutely. Councilmember Cass?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think what happens is, for the 5 years what we started, was that the state legislation only allowed us 5 years. And then we had people that ran out that said, look, I was getting this for 5 years, and now I'm still in my house, and now you're telling me that you're not going to give me this break. And then they went to 7, and that's why we went to 7, and now we're saying up to the 10. So I think that the idea for this whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, is keeping someone in their home if they would like to be, and if we don't make it as easy as possible, they're going to throw their hands up and say you're not playing fair. So I think this makes sense. Thanks.
Great. Yeah. One other thing, Council President Friesen?
So very minor thing, but in the packages for future, on page 2, in the second paragraph under bill specifics, the 2 numbers are a little bit off for the assessed value, $899,000. It should be $990, not $999. And then I believe the military credit should be $550,000, not $599,000. So
I apologize.
No,
and
it's fine.
I'll make sure the
just
final
for the
packet that it's
for full
corrected.
council,
Right.
if we could
Yeah.
just correct that and just make sure that's the right number, I would
Okay.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just there are a lot of numbers flying
Yes.
around, and there's enough confusion. So I just want to clarify, and I appreciate that. Just wanted to note that before I forgot, so that we can make sure for full council. And with that, I'll yield back and
All right.
appreciate the thoughtfulness that everybody has come to this with. It's a very important issue, one that we've received a lot of feedback on and a lot of interest in, and I know there's a shared commitment to support our residents who are trying to age in place and age in community and continue to contribute to Montgomery County. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I do want to thank OMB and our finance department and Ms. Wellens for all their work on this. And this just shows why we have committee sessions, to make sure that we go over these things before we move it to full council. And so with that, I'd just like to take a vote. All those in favor of moving this favorably forward to the full council as amended, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. And so, again, thank you very much for all your work on this, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. And with that, this session of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee is adjourned. We will be meeting again this afternoon in a joint session with the Transportation and Environment Committee. Thank you, everyone.